The house was quiet in the way that only lonely places are. Too clean, too still, holding its breath. I was folding laundry on the couch, matching socks I no longer recognized as ours, when the sound of the front door opening sliced through the silence. Not keys jingling alone, not his usual tired sigh, laughter, a woman's laughter. At first my mind tried to protect me. The TV next door, it whispered. A phone call on speaker. Anything but the truth that had been pacing around my chest for months, knocking louder every day. Then I heard his voice, confident, relaxed, almost proud. Come on in, you'll love it. Love what? My hands stilled. The sock slipped from my fingers to the floor. Slowly, too slowly. I stood and stepped into the hallway, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might expose me before I exposed them. That's when I saw them. My husband walked in first, still wearing his work jacket, shoulders straight like he was bringing home a prize. Beside him was a woman I had never seen before, young, polished, her arm looped through his as if it had always belonged there. She scanned the house with curious eyes, not like a guest, but like someone assessing an investment. She noticed me and smiled, not apologetically, not awkwardly, amused. "Oh," she said, tilting her head. "You didn't say she'd be home, My husband didn't even look at me before answering. This is my wife," he said casually. "She knows." The words echoed, hollow and cruel. I didn't know, not like this. Not with her standing in my living room, breathing my air, wearing confidence that wasn't hers to wear. I felt something strange happen inside me. Not anger, not tears, a sudden coldness, like a switch had been flipped. "You brought her here?" I asked. My voice surprised me. Calm, steady, he shrugged, loosening his jacket. "It's my house, too." The woman laughed softly as if this were entertaining. "He said you were sensitive," she added, studying my face. "I thought you'd be more dramatic." I looked at her, really looked, perfect hair, sharp nails, a mouth that had probably spoken promises she didn't understand the weight of. "She wasn't the cause of my pain, just the proof. And you," I said slowly, turning to my husband, "thought this was acceptable." He scoffed. "Don't start. I'm tired of your scenes. This is who I want. You can either deal with it or what? Leave the home I helped pay for. Disappear quietly so we could rewrite our story." I nodded once. "I see." That was when he frowned. He expected shouting, tears begging. He always did. Instead, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind that comes when something finally makes sense, when the confusion dies and clarity takes its place. "I just need a moment," I said, turning toward the bedroom. "Don't be dramatic." He called after me. I didn't respond. Inside the bedroom, the air felt heavier, filled with memories that suddenly felt borrowed. I closed the door, leaned against it, and let my hands shake for exactly 3 seconds. Then I picked up my phone. There were many calls I could have made to friends, to family, to scream into someone else's comfort. But grief could wait. This moment demanded precision. I scrolled until I found the name I hadn't touched in years. My finger hovered. Outside, I could hear them laughing again, glasses clinking, my home being invaded not just by bodies, but by disrespect. I pressed call. When the voice answered, deep and unfamiliar now, I said quietly, "Hi, I need to ask you something." "Yes." "Are you still married?" There was a pause. Then confusion. "No, why?" I exhaled, my lips curving slightly. "Good," I said. "Then please come over tonight." I ended the call before doubt could crawl in. On the other side of the door, Betrayal thought it had already won. It had no idea the game had just begun. I stayed in the bedroom longer than necessary, not because I was weak, but because I was listening. Laughter floated down the hallway, careless and loud. The sound of a wine bottle opening, music, my playlist being turned on without asking. Each noise landed like a reminder they were already acting like I was invisible. When I finally stepped out, I wore the calmest face I'd ever owned. They were sitting on the couch together, her legs tucked beneath her, his arms stretched along the backrest behind her shoulders, familiar, intimate, like a scene rehearsed in secret and now performed openly. My husband glanced up, surprised. "You done?" "Yes," I said simply. The mistress raised an eyebrow, clearly disappointed that I hadn't emerged crying. "You're taking this well," she said, swirling wine in my glass. "I've had practice," I replied and sat in the armchair across from them. My husband frowned. He didn't like that answer. He didn't like not knowing where he stood. "So," he said, crossing his arms, "we need to talk like adults. This situation isn't working anymore." I nodded. "You're right." He blinked. That wasn't the response he expected either. "I've been unhappy for a long time." He continued, emboldened by my silence. "You changed. You stopped being fun. Everything became about responsibility. Stress. I needed someone who made me feel alive again." The woman smiled at that, leaning into him like a trophy. "Love isn't supposed to feel like a chore," she added softly. I looked at her. "And lying doesn't bother you," she shrugged. "Men lie, women pretend not to notice. That's life." My husband laughed. "See, she understands." I smiled again. Slow, controlled. "Then you'll understand this too." I stood and walked toward the kitchen. Their eyes followed me, curious now. "I made dinner reservations tonight." I said over my shoulder, "For 4. He scoffed. "You're joking." "No," I replied. "I'm hosting." The mistress's lips parted. "Hosting who?" "Someone important," I said to all of us. That finally unsettled them. My husband stood. "You're being weird. If this is some manipulation tactic, sit," I said gently. Something in my tone made him pause. He sat. While they whispered to each other, I busied myself arranging plates, straightening cushions, small acts of control in a space I refused to surrender. My phone buzzed in my pocket. On my way, the message read. I felt my pulse steady. The mistress leaned forward. "You know," she said mockingly, "this would all be easier if you just accepted reality. He doesn't love you anymore." I met her eyes. "Are you sure you know what love looks like?" Her smile faltered for half a second, just long enough. My husband checked the time. "Who exactly are you waiting for?" I walked to the front door and rested my hand on the handle. "Someone who values honesty." The doorbell rang. The sound cracked the room open like thunder. My husband jumped. "Who the hell is that?" I opened the door without answering. The man standing there was taller than I remembered, older too, but his eyes were sharp, observant. He looked past me into the living room, instantly taking in the scene. When the mistress saw him, her face drained of color. The wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. "Husband," she screamed. The word echoed, ugly and exposed. My husband turned, confusion snapping into panic. What did she just say? The man stepped inside slowly. "That's what I'd like to know," he said coldly, eyes locked on the woman who was now shaking. She backed away. I can explain it to me," he asked, or to him. He nodded toward my husband. The truth hit the room like a physical force. My husband staggered back. "You're married." She started crying. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." I closed the door quietly behind him. "No," I said softly, "but betrayal rarely does." And in that moment I realized something powerful. They had both underestimated me, and it was finally costing them everything. Silence swallowed the room after her scream. Not the peaceful kind. This was thick, choking, heavy with consequences. The broken glass glittered on the floor like a warning no one had listened to. The mistress stood frozen, eyes darting between the two men, her lies collapsing faster than she could rebuild them. My husband was the first to find his voice. "What kind of sick setup is this?" he demanded, pointing at me. "You planned this. You embarrassed me on purpose." I tilted my head. "You brought betrayal into this house first. I just invited honesty to join us." The man, her husband, stepped farther into the room, his posture calm but dangerous. He loosened his tie slowly, like someone preparing for a long night. "Is this where you've been coming every time you said you were visiting your sister?" he asked her quietly. She sobbed harder. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." "Funny," he replied. "Neither did I." My husband scoffed nervously. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married. This isn't on me." Her husband turned to him with a measured stare. "You're sleeping with a married woman in your own home, in front of your wife, and you think you're innocent." That landed. My husband opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in years, he had nothing to say. She reached for him, my husband, grabbing his arm like he was her last lifeline. "Tell him you love me," she begged. "Tell him you were going to leave her." My husband pulled away. I need time," he muttered. "Time," I laughed softly. "You had time, you just wasted it." Her husband looked at me then, really looked, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "You planned this carefully," he said. "It wasn't an accusation, it was respect. I planned for the truth," I replied. "What people do with it is their choice." He nodded once. The mistress slid down onto the couch, mascara streaking her face, dignity draining by the second. "You don't understand," she cried. I felt invisible at home. Her husband's jaw tightened. "So you decided to make someone else invisible instead." I watched my husband shift uncomfortably, realizing too late that the script had flipped. He wasn't the one in control anymore. "He was just another liar in the room. I want you out," her husband said to her suddenly. She looked up, stunned. "Out? You can't mean—" "I do," he said coldly. "Tonight." She turned to my husband again. "Then I'll stay here." The audacity stole my breath. My husband hesitated, then looked at me, searching my face for permission he no longer had. I smiled. "No," I said simply. "What?" he snapped. "No one stays here except me." I continued. "This is my home, and you're all just guests who overstayed." Her husband exhaled slowly. "I'll handle this," he said, motioning toward the door. As he guided her out, she screamed, at him, at me, at the universe that had finally caught up with her. "You think you've won," she shouted back at me. "You'll still be alone." I met her eyes calmly. Alone is better than betrayed. The door slammed shut. The house felt different without her, lighter, like it had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. My husband stood there, pale and shaken. "You destroyed everything," he whispered. I walked past him, picking up the shattered glass carefully. "No," I corrected. "I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken." He watched me, desperation creeping in. "We can fix this." I turned to him slowly. "You don't fix things you were proud to destroy." And for the first time he understood. This wasn't revenge fueled by rage. This was the sound of power quietly changing hands. The days after that night felt unreal, like I had stepped into someone else's life and forgotten how to go back. The house was quieter now, but not lonely. It was peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. No tension humming under the walls. No waiting for a man who treated absence like a habit. My husband tried to talk the next morning. I didn't. He followed me from room to room, words spilling out apologies tangled with excuses, regret wrapped in fear. He said he'd made a mistake, said he was confused, said he didn't know what he was thinking. I listened in silence. When he finished, I handed him a folder. "What's this?" he asked. "Reality." I replied. Inside were copies of the mortgage papers with my name as primary owner. Bank statements from the business I'd quietly built while supporting his career. Screenshots, dates. Proof I had learned long ago that love without protection is a gamble. And I had stopped gambling years before he betrayed me. His hands shook as he flipped through the pages. "You planned this," he whispered. I shook my head. I prepared. There's a difference. By the end of the week, he was gone, not dramatically, no shouting, no slammed doors, just a suitcase and a man finally realizing he had lost the only person who ever truly had his back. Word traveled fast. Friends who once believed his version of me started calling, apologizing for what they hadn't seen. His coworkers stopped inviting him out. Her name became a warning instead of a temptation. Consequences don't always scream. They spread quietly like truth does. As for her husband, he sent me a message one evening. "Thank you for the honesty," it read. "You saved me years of lies." I didn't reply. I didn't need gratitude. I needed closure. And I had already claimed it. The divorce was swift. Not because I rushed, but because there was nothing left to argue over. He had underestimated me at every turn, and that was his final mistake. I kept the house, the business, my name. He kept his regrets. The last time I saw him, he looked smaller somehow. Not weaker, just exposed. "You never loved me," he said quietly. I met his gaze. I loved you enough to leave when you didn't. That was the truth that hurt him most. Months later, I hosted a dinner party in the same living room where my humiliation had once sat so comfortably. The walls felt warmer now, the laughter was real, and when someone asked how I found the courage to walk away, I smiled. I remembered who I was before I forgot myself. That night, as I locked the door behind my guests, I stood in the quiet and realized something beautiful. Revenge wasn't bringing someone else down. It was watching them realize you were never as powerless as they believed. I slept peacefully for the first time in years. No lies, no fear, no waiting. Just freedom earned, protected, and undeniably mine. Sparkled.